In the midnight, a light in an upstairs window, a shadow slips across a carpet, a whisper, a struggling gasp, then silence. The city breathes again. It should have been over, but it wasn't. For months, terror walked the streets in plain clothes. Houses once safe became traps. Neighbors bolted doors. Women slept with knives, and in the dark, a figure moved with a calm that froze an entire region. Please help this channel grow. Like the video, try the new hype feature, leave a comment and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. This is the story of how a boy became a shadow, how a life shaped by pain, obsession, and violence spiraled into a crime spree that would change lives forever. This is the making of a monster. To understand the terror, we must first understand the boy. The man who would be called the Night Stalker did not spring fully formed from darkness. He was shaped by family, by environment, by unhealed wounds, and choices that stacked one upon another until the weight bent him. Born in 1960 into a home where normalcy was strained, the boy grew up with a father whose temper was sharp and unpredictable. At home there were raised voices, doors slammed, and a young mind learning the language of fear. Homes where warmth should have been learned instead taught him to flinch. As a child he absorbed the rules of survival, silence when anger came, watchfulness when footsteps approached. Those roles would later harden into habits that strangers would call menace. In adolescence, he encountered violence and images that warped his sense of normal. From television segments to real-life exposure, he watched cruelty and learned that power sometimes wore the face of fear. An impressionable mind, exposed to the wrong models at the wrong time, can believe the world is a place where only force wins. Add to that a fascination with death and the macabre, a curiosity that blurred the lines between curiosity and fantasy, and you have an anatomy of a mind gradually being normalized to brutality. As a young adult he moved through the shadows of urban life, drifting, committing petty crimes, experimenting with substances, and making choices that pulled him further from the world most of us call ordinary. Arrests for burglary and smaller offenses became chapters in a book that would not close. Burglary, at first a crime of theft, became training. It taught him how to enter houses without waking occupants, how to move silently, how to read a room. These skills, terrifying in retrospect, were stepwise lessons. Each trespass was practice. Each success built confidence. The 1980s in California were a tapestry of contrasts: growing cities, nightlife, and the quiet comfort of suburbs. But along with growth came anonymity. Neighbors could live alongside one another and remain strangers. In that distance, predators found cover. People assumed their homes were safe. They locked doors. They left lights on. No one imagined a man could slip through that safety and leave a trail of shattered lives. The crimes began as night breakings and escalated. They were not random in the sense of aimless chaos. They were deliberate, chillingly methodical. He selected houses. He watched. He chose victims who were vulnerable in that moment. Doorbells at odd hours. A shadow on the edge of a curtain. A window pushed open just enough. The burglary started like a cold that crept from room to room and then became a disease. For every home invaded, there was a life interrupted, a woman awakened, a child frightened, an elderly man forced to choose between defiance and survival. Surviving one attack left scars deeper than the night. With time, the intrusions became more violent. Some nights ended with stolen items. Other nights did not end at all for the people involved. The sense of safety evaporated, replaced by an understanding that the intruder might not leave without taking something far more valuable than jewelry: human dignity, life. It is important to say this clearly: the crimes were brutal in consequence, and yet the telling of what happened can never capture the full horror felt by survivors and families. We will avoid the gratuitous. Instead, we will honor them by listening, remembering, and telling truth. One survivor would later describe waking to a presence by her bed, the dim shape of a man moving toward the light. She pretended to be asleep, heart pounding, fingers clenching the bedsheet. Motionless, she counted breaths, timed the pauses, and when the intruder leaned in, she seized a moment, a small, desperate move, and ran. Her bravery, a single split decision, saved her life. Another household was not so fortunate. A family awoke to sound and horror. The aftermath was a community stitched together by grief. We do not linger on gruesome detail. Instead, we remember names, faces, birthdays stolen from future calendars. The pattern became clear. Attacks clustered within certain neighborhoods, within certain time windows. A predator was learning the ropes. A city was learning fear. When a pattern emerges, detectives build a net. They follow threads. DNA when it exists. eyewitness accounts when memory holds, physical evidence when it is left behind. In this case, investigators faced a predator who moved quickly, who left inconsistent evidence, and who seemed to have an instinct for avoiding capture. Early on, law enforcement had to balance public alarm with methodical investigation. Night patrols increased, neighborhood watch groups formed, citizens installed extra lights. But fear can also produce error, mistaken reports, false leads, and the pressure on police to produce answers. For detectives, every tip had to be vetted. Every rumor could lead time away from the truth. They worked long hours, interviewing witnesses, compiling timelines, and trying to build a behavioral profile. Small details eventually coalesced into leads. A footprint here, a tool left behind there, an item found in a fence line. One piece, then another, and gradually a map of movement. Perhaps most consequential were the survivors who could describe aspects of the intruder: a walk, a voice, a hand gesture. Their accounts were imperfect, human, but they were the bones on which the case would be built. And then, in a moment that reads like a movie but was very real, the public, not only police, played a role in ending the spree. People on a street recognized someone. A group chased, restrained, and confronted the man who had haunted their nights. They called the police. Lives that had been held together by fear found sudden release in a citizen's courage. It was a reminder: policing is not only a profession, it is also a social contract between neighbors. Sometimes, ordinary people become the agents of justice. Once in custody, investigators sifted through the suspect's past, prior arrests, known addresses, associates, forensic evidence, fibers, stolen items, and other materials was compared to items from known scenes. Slowly, a case was assembled. The work that follows in arrest is painstaking and heavy with consequence. Detectives create arrest reports, prosecutors evaluate charges, and families wait to see whether the law will account for the harm done. In court, the story of the crimes was told under strong lights and strict rules. Witnesses took the stand, evidence was presented. The accused, once a shadow, now sat in a courtroom, and the public watched. The trial unfolded amid intense media attention. Some trials become spectacles, but at their core they are about truth and accountability. Jurors were tasked with weighing testimony and evidence, separating emotion from fact, a difficult task when the crimes under scrutiny had left so much emotional residue. Ultimately, the legal system reached its verdicts. The suspect was convicted on multiple counts: for burglary, for assault, and for the most serious charges that had brought fear to so many. Sentenced to decades behind bars, a punishment meant to protect the public and to exact a measure of justice, he spent his remaining years in prison. Incarceration did not erase the crime nor the grief, but it did remove the immediate danger from the streets. Some followed his life behind bars with a wary fascination. Others wrote him off as a monster beyond rehabilitation. Families, meanwhile, tried to rebuild, a slow and even work of recovery. For survivors and for families of the dead, the trial and conviction offered a mix of relief and continued sorrow. Justice in court cannot erase trauma. Grief does not end when a gavel falls. It lingers in empty chairs, in birthdays and celebrated, in the quiet places where loved ones once were. Communities adjusted. They installed better locks, created watch groups, and spoke to their children differently. The case became a cautionary tale about vigilance and neighborliness. The case left a complicated legacy. It changed how some law enforcement agencies approached serial investigations, highlighted the limits of media coverage, and forced conversations about the social conditions that allow predators to operate. How does a boy become a monster? There is no single answer. There are threads: poverty, violence, neglect, choices, and sometimes a cruel twist of chance. But the question that should sit with us is not only how evil is made, it is how we as a society respond when warning signs appear. We tell these stories not for spectacle but to remember, to honor those who survived, to mourn those who were lost, and to learn. To make neighborhoods safer, to listen when children flinch at raised hands, to build systems that intercept violence before it becomes a pattern. Names fade, but memory need not. In the quiet after the fear, the challenge is this: will we let that memory teach us to be better neighbors, more vigilant parents, and more humane citizens? Or will we forget, letting the lesson slip like sand through fingers until another child answers the question too late? This was Making of a Monster, and this is why we tell this story.